Let's go back down here. Dalbert? As the cycle of the rites drew to a close, it grew evident that a chance at freedom from the downside had forever slipped from Dalbert and Onwer Oldheart's grasp. Thus, they and the exiles of the Fate returned to Jomware Valley. There they struggled to get by, as exiles of the downside tend to do. Sometime after the rites had ended, the Old Hearts at last heard the news that the Commonwealth had fallen. This was well after the fact, of course, but it brought old Dalbert great joy. Despite his forthright manner, he had no love for the nation that cast him down, along with his son. Dalbert Oldheart passed peacefully in his sleep before the next new moon. No! Don't tell me that! In his final days, he implored his son to undertake a pilgrimage to the scribes. Ulmer never shared his father's view of the scribes, but respected Dalbert's wishes. And so, after a period of mourning, Ulmer began a new journey. One day during his travels, he ran almost headlong into another exile after paying homage at the spring of Jomware. Faye. He was stunned to find that this was none other than the one he knew as Faye, from their days as adversaries in the rites. Faye was overjoyed to see him, though Ulmer was unable to bring himself to understand why. Eventually, of course, he did, and they remained together, growing ever more accustomed to their new lives in the downside. Not a day went by that Ulmer Oldheart did not think about his father, and give thanks to him, and speak to him at morning and at night. Would that the stars yet shone, for surely Dalbert's would be there among them, smiling down at his son, and watching over him and his kin. Oh, did you have to break my heart like that, game? Okay, Lendl, what have you done? After the final liberation rite, Lendl refused to believe that the rites had truly ended. He would sit through night after consecutive night, staring into the blackness of the sky, awaiting any kind of sign that he might gain another chance at freedom. No such sign ever came. His fellow accusers started to express concern for him. Survival had become their top priority once liberty had slipped from their grasp. But Lendl dismissed them as weak fools. He insisted, rather forcefully, that any evening now the stars would shine for him again and mark the way toward his inevitable freedom. He was, of course, mistaken. The others in his triumvirate were left with little choice but to abandon him. After that, the exile known as Lendl the Liar was never seen again. These guys don't have happy endings at all. Lendl does not deserve a happy ending. However, there have since been sightings of a bedraggled demon, who wanders the downside and bears Lendl's cruel countenance, suggesting he yet lives. Hey, did you manage to summon your dark god? After the cycle of the rites had ceased, Witch Unmild had returned to the Flagging Hands region, where she sealed herself within the Pit of Malith. There, even her fellow exiles of the Withdrawn allegedly grew unnerved after a time, and left her to her vile work. Sometime later, the Pit of Malith erupted into flame. So intense was the conflagration that it could be seen all the way from Jomware Valley. Arson was suspected, though the cause was never verified, and many bog dwellers in the region were forced to flee. A tempest blowing from the north finally quenched the flames. When at last the ashes settled and the grounds had cooled, the site of the fire was scarred beyond recognition. No trace of Witch Unmild could be found. As for the contents of the Pit of Malith, which notably included a profane object thought to be the remains of Islark, all of it was gone as well. I wonder if you become a demon based on how long you've been down there, or if it happens once you lose hope. I think it's time-based, because Jodie hadn't really lost hope. Back in the Saurian Union, with Mill's repeated threats of the return of Islark were thoroughly investigated, and no credence was found to any of her claims. Okay, Deluge? All his life, Sir Deluge had fled from one danger only to find himself finding another. He had escaped the war-torn waters of the Sea Dominion, he had escaped the blood border of the Commonwealth, and now he had escaped the rites. After the rites had ended, many exiles wrapped up in the ancient test were crestfallen as their last chances to return to their homes vanished, along with the stars above. But Deluge did not mind, for this outcome meant that at last there was no burden of responsibility weighing down on him. While most of his fellow exiles of the Pyre hearts yet longed for the waters of the Sea Dominion, driven as ever by their impulses towards conflict, Deluge settled down. With him remained one of his companions, one Lady Seagrass, who had taken a liking to him for some reason. She was a worm knight duty-bound to serving Sir Deluge and the Pyre hearts. Okay, I guess we fought her. Reportedly, they disappeared into the waters of Worm Gulf, which may begin to explain the significant increase in worm population observed in the vicinity. Okay. Barker Ashpaws! Yes! Barker Ashpaws never had much interest in returning to the Commonwealth, for he always found its bylaws to be stifling. So, when the rites ended, he did not care at first. He soon grew very bored. The rites had given his life a certain sense of structure he had always needed. He missed the raw anticipation of it all. He decided to continue conducting the rites for the thrill of it. He bent some of the rules and replaced some of the objects, but it was close enough. He invented soccer basketball. His packmates, the Dissidents, proved more than happy to participate, and thus they ran against each other back in Jomware Valley. Gradually, other exiles familiar with the rites, as well as those who had not heard of it at all, started to take an interest. They ended up giving Barker Ashpaws some healthy competition. His old feud with Rookie Greentail ceased meaning anything to him, and he forgot all about it amid his new pursuits. Ultimately, even Barker Ashpaws, who had led such a directionless existence to that point, found something of a calling through the rites. Whether he took the rites less seriously than any other exile of his time, or more, was oft debated by those who watched him work. Good stuff. Throughout her exile, Tamitha Thane was motivated by a single goal: to return to the Commonwealth and exact vengeance on her ancient enemies. Yep. When she realized the rites had ended, and that she would never see her mountain home again, she nonetheless remained determined to aid her people however possible. She had gathered certain information pertaining to the intentions of the Nightwings, who had formed a pact to regroup on the other side after their liberation. Other such reports exposed certain weaknesses in the Commonwealth defences, and revealed to the Highwing remnants the opportunity for a risky but potentially impactful strike. As Tamitha could not participate in the assault, she learned what happened well after the outcome. On that night, known as the Scribe's Return, the Commonwealth had fallen. The Highwing remnants thus prevailed at last without even having to fight. Soon after the fall of the Commonwealth, Tamitha encountered her blood sister, Pamitha, come to pay her a visit. Pamitha had hoped their people's victory on the other side would be cause for reconciliation. Tamitha was skeptical of her intentions, however, and lashed out at her. Pamitha made no attempt to elude the attack, and was struck full-on. This cost Pamitha the use of her right wing. Oh dang! Yet, after she recovered, she shrugged the incident aside and said maybe they would call it even now. From that point on, the Blood Sisters kept a formal distance, but were cordial with each other. Knowing that the conflict on the other side had ended, Tamitha retreated to the crags of Black Basin, and grew ever more distant. Those closest to her surmised that her inability to reconcile with her blood sister was at the heart of this, though, for her part, Tamitha never once admitted to any such weakness. That's some injury, right? Like, ouch. When Manly Tinderstaff realised that rites had ended, and that he could no longer return to the Commonwealth through this ancient means, he was outraged. He cursed the scribes, spewing forth such a slew of blasphemy as to be very unbecoming of one of his high status and bearing. When at last he calmed himself, he focused all his energies on attempting to find another means of homecoming. He maintained regular contact with his wealthy family on the other side via messenger imp, and used their vast resources to explore other means of escape. He tried using an elaborate pulley system. He attempted to retrofit a flying black wagon with superior propulsion. He tried an imp raft, a hot air balloon, even prayer. Nothing worked. There was only one way to escape the downside, and now it was gone. Tinderstaff bankrupted his family in these vain attempts. At last, such was his shame that he retreated to the teeming woods of Black Basin, to Cinderroot. Yet, there he yet wallows, complaining to his comrades of the chastity who still put up with him, either about his own misfortune or the latest news from the other side. Do harps have hands? No, I don't think they do. Okay, Ignarius. Once it became clear to Ignarius that the rites were drawing to a close, he knew that it was time for him and the Tempers to call it quits. But first, he and the Tempers decided to celebrate, and that they did for many, many nights. The revelry did eventually subside. The exiles parted amicably and went their separate ways. He roamed the downside then, searching for some meaning in his life, sometimes taking odd jobs requiring his brute strength. He never remained alone for very long, and took on many lovers in his time. Okay. However, he sometimes thought about the one he had called Curly Horns and what became of her. Oh my god. Through his glory days as the most powerful conductor of the rites that had long since passed, he always enjoyed the fearsome reputation he had cultivated at that time. Okay. Now here we have the ones I'm really curious about. In the aftermath of the final liberation rite, Oralek had at last returned to his nation, one he had not seen in nearly 2 decades. He scarce recognized it. After all, it was in the midst of transformation, a social and cultural upheaval sparked by Volfred Sandalwood's plan. When Oralek witnessed the people of the Commonwealth standing shoulder to shoulder and chanting together on the night of Scribe's return, he looked on in silence for a time. Then he stepped toward the crowd. A murmur and a hush moved through the gathered citizens at the sight of him, for they had never seen someone thus changed by the downside. But then Oralek raised his voice with theirs, and they all stood united once again. History would know him as the Demon Doctor, a term of endearment that stuck even after his horns started to recede. Excuse me? No. Illegal. He lent his skill and service throughout the birth of the Saurian Union. The one he had called the Shadow of the False Nightwings was someone whom he thought of often. He knew he owed his freedom to them. In light of having witnessed the aftermath of Sandalwood's plan, Oralek sought out his former companion. I'm glad all of you are as outraged about the horns as I am. Like, come on! While they kept private the details of the conversation that took place, it must have been enough to rebuild the bonds of friendship between the two of them. They were often seen together after that. Oralek later reunited with Tizo, who took residence with him, in some ways similar to how they lived in olden times. The imp always enjoyed his company. Alone with his thoughts, Oralek would sometimes visit the memorial to the fallen leaders of the Commonwealth. Though, other than such appearances, and notwithstanding his duties as Master Physician of the state, Oralek led a very private life. What happened to Brandon? Are we going to find out what happened to Brandon? Few would have guessed that he was once one of the most accomplished rites conductors in the history of the Nightwings. History, of course, shall ensure that we shall not forget. Okay, so she lights up this background. I'm gonna go Lone Minstrel first. He's our bard. Oh, fine. Okay. I guess it makes sense that they do both of you at the same time. After the cycle of the rites ceased turning, the Lone Minstrel bade the remaining Nightwings take the Black Wagon and seek their fortunes elsewhere in the downside. Their parting was heartfelt, but brief. He remained there at the summit of Mount Elodial with Celeste, where the two of them would chronicle the final outcome of the cycle. Neither Tariq nor Celeste were ever seen again. We know all this now through song attributed to them. Some claim these songs originated in the taverns of the Saurian Union, and merely were imbued with the weight of folklore. However, exiles liberated from the downside corroborated each other's claims at having met this duo that presided over the liberation rites. Another folktale suggests these minstrels were heralds of the scribes. Having fulfilled their obligations, they departed the world we know and rejoined their patrons. One of their famous songs describes another, simpler outcome, that the two gave up their duties to the rites in favour of a life that they could share together. I hope that was it. In any case, they are likely to remain the subject of such verses and songs, for it was they who watched over the rites and ushered in our times. Is it Brandon? There is one more account which warrants mention. The Nightwings conducted the rites under the guidance of a reader. Little is known of them. However, some accounts of them begin to paint a picture. We know they were of common birth. Weak-framed, though raised with a penchant for learning. The journey to the downside left them close to death. It was then that the Nightwings found them. Wait, is this a loop back to the beginning of the game? No, okay. They brought them from the brink. They showed them the path. They pressed onward with the others. They had made a vow to help their friends be free. Thus did the cycle of the rites commence its final turns. When the final rite arrived, the reader's freedom was at stake. In the end, however, they remained in exile. From that point on, accounts of them diverge. It is said the voice, which troubled them, they never heard again. Some say they opted for a place to settle in the downside, though whether that is true, only they know. Someday perhaps that reader's own star shall emerge. Then it shall pierce the dark of night in all its brilliant glory. Get fucked, Brandon. Good sentiment, team. Until such time, and ever after, all of us give thanks. We ran off with Sandra, we sure did.
Their journey began on a barren waste where the reader arrived, afraid and alone. When they arrived, the book of rites awakened the Nightwings and ignited the flame. They follow the stars, bound together, strands in our brain till the end. We sing of the last
We made it into the constellations!
Nightwings who, having broken the cycle, shall live on in song. Headwind prevailed
Oh my gosh!
and strode the
This I was not
path
expecting.
that his heart laid before him. He has found his way home.
I guess it's going to go for
Captain
everyone.
Joe Dariel, mother to many a foundling, she has found her way home.
Oh my gosh.
Rookie
You and Jody?
Greentail
Yep.
has proved his worth and returned to his family by the grace of the scribes. They follow the stars, bound together, strands in a brain till the end.
touched girl feels the scribes in the heart of the downside. She remained to the end.
Tiso prevailed.
Is Celeste singing for the people who stayed behind and the minstrel for the ones who were free? Because if that's true, that is so cool.
He has found a new home. Sir Gilman the Bold, ever in
No, okay.
his quest, finding honor and glory. He has found his way home.
There are different versions of this song for every combination. Wow. That's pretty great though. Oh my gosh, her new haircut is so cute.
Seeking forgiveness. She remains to the end. They follow the stars bound together. Strands in a braid till
Man.
the end.
Look at all the voices Logan Cunningham is. I only get the version when nobody was liberated on the OST.
Alfred prevailed.
Does that mean you can't actually play the game without liberating someone? That's interesting.
To glory. He has found his way home.
The bog dweller Bertrude kept their foes at bay with her finest enchantments. She remained till the end. The reader at last made the night wings whole, having bound them together.
Yeah, the dynamic generation. That's the only thing that makes sense.
They follow the stars bound together. Strands in a braid till the end. They follow the stars bound together.
Aww.
Strands in a braid till the end. Now at the end, as we bid
If I made games Supergiant as a company, I would give everything to work for.
we shall
Yep.
find our way home. We shall find our way home. We shall find our way home.
Oh hey, that's you all cloaked up in the middle. Oh hey, I didn't pick up on that. Oh. Oh, post-credits sting. Is it Brandon? Is this my new home? Did I get my books back? Look at the world outside. What is going on there? Is this the setup for New Game Plus? Okay, I guess I should... Okay, it just says the end. I was just about to poke things. That was good. True Nightwing campaign mode unlocked. I know that that's the really hard mode, and no. No. We brought literacy back to the Commonwealth. Oh, okay, it's our legacy. I gotcha. Aww. Well. That's that. That is Pyre. We did it! We liberated a statistically significant number of our companions. Oh man. That was a journey. And I'm glad that we stuck with it. Like, I remember a few streams ago when, like, we'd done 2 liberation rites, I think. And I was just, and I was unsure about whether I wanted to go through all that reiteration. But that was really good. That was emotionally exhausting and probably nasty on the vocal cords. I am a little bit raspy now. Still really happy about Sandra. Me too. How many hours did you put into the whole thing? Okay, let's say each stream's about 4 hours. I know there are a few streams that were shorter in there, but oh wait, hang on, I can just go look at YouTube. Goodbye, Pyre music. I do actually need, like, a browser window. Thank you. YouTube. Actually, I might even just be able to look on my computer. Okay, so there are 39 episodes. It's the runtime. You're not going to tell me. Okay, then. So that's about 24 hours? Yeah, 24 hours of gameplay, thereabouts. I imagine it would have been a lot shorter if I hadn't been reading it all to everyone, but, oh, good point. I could have just looked on Steam as well. But at least my math checks out. But yeah, 24 hours. Yeah, I can do that in one sitting. I mean, it was a collaborative experience, though. Okay. Well, yeah. Dang, okay. Thank you everyone for coming. Next week, I imagine, Next week is either going to be a fun shouting co-op friend stream or hive swap. Either way, I'm sure that it will be amusing for everyone. Thank you so much for game. It was a delight and joy. You're more than welcome. Thank you so much for experiencing it with me. But yes, hopefully we continue to keep up this positive trend. So I shall see y'all next week, and until then, have some fun. So I'm gonna miss next week? Oh no! No, okay, well, depending on what it is, it might not be that significant, so... I really vote for co-op, not hive swap? Yep, gotcha. I think co-op will happen. It's going to be fun cramming everything into my room with how I'm moving everything right now, but yes. I think something less reading for a week for your voice's sake, if nothing else. We are leaning towards co-op. Babysitting all the kiddos for our friend? Okay. That is a thing that happens. But yeah, okay. God, I'm just... I am really drained after that. Like, that was draining. Ash is good entertaining for kiddos. Rag! No! No, that's such a bad idea! This is... As much as I joke about it, it is not family friendly. Let's not do that. I don't want Logic to hate me forever, or Logic's friend also to hate me forever for corrupting the child's. Whose allergy central likes to itch herself bloody because she's 3? Oof, that sucks. That poor kid. Anyway, I'm drained. I am gonna go get some drink and some food, and I'm gonna let Pyre settle in my brain as a good Supergiant game does, and I'll see you all next week. See you everyone.